Brad Keselowski, talk to me.
It's Ted from Consumer Cellular, and this is your wake-up call.
All right, time to wake race fans up.
Exactly. They don't have to keep overpaying for cell service.
But they need speed.
Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage as the leading carriers.
Is switching lanes easy?
Oh yeah. Right now, get a plan as low as $15 a month for the first year.
Vroom, vroom.
Just call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com for promotional details.
I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Welcome to News du Jour. You may be wondering, why am I, Annie Bowles, here hosting this podcast? I usually start by telling people I'm a political baby. You see, my parents met working on Capitol Hill. By the time I was 2, I had been in my first political commercial and even got lost crawling around the West Wing. Don't worry, Al Gore found me. My family then moved abroad when I was 9, and I attended an international school in Brussels with kids from all over the world. And it is this type of global perspective that I also bring to our show. I graduated from American University in DC after studying political science and art history, as well as interning on both sides of Capitol Hill. I even interned down the hall from where my parents met. I'm now pursuing a professional certificate in journalism at NYU in conjunction with Rolling Stone magazine. I guess I was always that friend in the group who cared deeply about not just what was going on politically, but also globally. I often kept my own friends informed through high school and into young adulthood, so I guess I've always done a version of this show. I'm genuinely passionate about following the news, and I'm here to break it down for you guys every weekday. We always strive to be a calmer space to get your news. Or, as one listener put it, like getting your news from a well-informed bestie. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, everyone. So due to a series of unfortunate events, I'm recording super late tonight and I am so tired. So I apologize if that comes through in this recording. I'm exhausted. Anywho, I wanted to issue a reminder here at the top that this Thursday is the State of the Union, just in case you're not from the US or you've never seen a State of the Union address. They're basically where the president will go before Congress and summarize where we're at as a country in one speech. And even though it's in front of Congress technically, it's really in front of the whole world. This one will take place on Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Time. I will definitely be watching, taking notes as always, and we'll have a breakdown for you guys on not the very next day's episode. So I guess Monday's episode, we'll go over the State of the Union. And then also, of course, today, like we mentioned yesterday, is Super Tuesday. So that is where 17 different states are going to be voting in the primaries. So there's going to be a flurry of activity, you guys. And it's going to probably, determine the outcome of the election, just because usually with a Super Tuesday, you can see so many of the results that it becomes clear who the winner will be. But it's not official until all the states are done voting. I do have one mini story for you guys today. And then I have, let's see. Okay, so I have one story here at the top, but then I actually have 4 different spy related stories. We're going over spies, and more spies today. Let's jump in. So for our mini story, a man by the name of Alan Weisselberg, if you guys remember, we've talked about him before on this podcast. He was a key financial chief for the Trump organization, but he has now pled guilty to felony perjury, you guys, essentially lying under oath, but on the felony level. He has consistently acted to protect the former president and continues to do so, even at the cost of his own freedom. And that brings us to our first story before we jump into all of the spies. Supreme Court keeps Trump on the ballot. So yesterday, about 10 a.m. Eastern Time, the Supreme Court ruled on Trump's Colorado ballot issues. They determined in an unanimous decision that Trump's name will remain on the ballot. You see, it all came down to an interpretation of who could enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which has to do with someone attacking the U.S. government. Where the Supreme Court landed was that it's actually up to Congress to enforce Section 3, not the states. So this means that this interpretation sets precedent, you guys, and will likely affect the appeals in Maine and Illinois as well, as we discussed on yesterday's episode. And just as a reminder, the Supreme Court works in these cycles. So we're about to get a bunch of decisions. It's going to feel like rapid fire. It's going to make your head spin a little bit because the day after we get one big decision, we're going to get another one. So I just wanted to prepare you guys that we have one of those flurries happening right now. And then in a related story, I wanted to let you guys know that Nikki Haley won a Republican primary, and she's actually the first woman to do so. You may have heard by now, but Nikki Haley actually won DC. It votes as a state in primaries, of course. You know, they have to be represented as well. And it is the first time a woman has ever won a Republican primary, ever. So for president, even though it is a very small win and does not stand to turn the tide of this election in any major way, it is historical. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And then we're going to head into our spies, and more spies. So I have 4 different updates to spy-related stories for you guys. And as they were kind of like piling up, I was like, you know what? I think this could be a longer situation. And the impetus for this was Jack Teixeira. So if you guys remember, a young man by the name of Jack is facing serious charges after posting secret intelligence reports online repeatedly. He was a very young man, is a very young man, and I just feel like it was almost like an ego thing, like he was showing off online by showing these, classified documents. He initially entered a plea of not guilty, but he has just retreated that for a guilty plea. And in exchange, he will get a 16-year sentence and a comprehensive briefing, or he will give a comprehensive briefing on exactly what he shared online, when, and where. As a reminder, these deals are contingent on someone being honest and doing an honest review of what was leaked. So if they find out later that he omitted anything, he would still be on the hook for his full sentence, which if he had not pled guilty, he could have spent up to 60 years behind bars. And that brings us to the WikiLeaks guy. So if you guys remember, there was a man by the name of Julian Assange who leaked a bunch of sensitive U.S. government documents as well previously. This happened a little while ago now when we were younger. What he leaked was known as the WikiLeaks, and he essentially shared with the world details of actions by the United States in Afghanistan, Iraq, Guantanamo Bay, and more, which, to put it, in like the most mild way I could, were distasteful, did not look good for the United States. Really, they might have been things that violated international law. I'm not totally sure about that, but, they were things that were against our principles as a country. I'll put it that way. Julian was the journalist who leaked this sensitive information as part of the press and the video footage, etc., after being given this information by a soldier who was his source. Well, now the United States would like to extradite him from London in order to try him here in America. But some would argue that it could essentially amount to a death sentence in prison because he stands to face a lot of charges. A United Nations expert, Irene Khan, has actually come out and saying that this is a freedom of press issue and that what he did was in the public interest. Another public figure who's spoken out on behalf of Julian was the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. He said essentially that the UK should allow him to stay in order to protect him from prosecution here in America. What do you guys think? Was he just a journalist doing a public service and doing his job by, releasing information he was given? Or is he a traitor to the United States government for releasing this sensitive information? Should he be allowed to stay in the UK, even though they're allies to us? Should he be prosecuted here if he's forced to return? This is certainly a complex issue, and we will be sure to keep you guys posted. So next up for today, the Biden inquiry informant. Okay, guys, so this is not new information, but The Daily did just put out, The Daily is a podcast by the New York Times. They did just put out like a deep dive into this situation if you guys are interested. So I thought it was a good time to update you. But as it turns out, the entire impetus for the impeachment inquiry into President Biden was a source for the FBI. An informant. And just to be clear, an informant is someone who gathers information for us and hands it to us. They don't necessarily work for the US government, and we can never be totally sure if an informant is trustworthy. And it was just the one guy, zero facts or evidence or other witnesses to corroborate what he was alleging. And it turns out this guy had not only a grudge against the Biden family in general and spoke to that quite a bit, but he also had very extensive ties to the Kremlin in Russia. What's more, the other whistleblower that they had in this case was discovered to be a Chinese operative in July, you guys. He was literally arrested for it. All of this together makes it seem like the original sources that got them looking down this path to start with and started blowing all this smoke may have been making things up. And with every witness, of course, from the Biden camp testifying that Biden did not engage in business activities with his son, without any evidence to prove otherwise, it appears that this case may be dead in the water. It even has Fox News making jokes about the lengths to which they were going to, only to find out that they've been taken for a ride by China and Russia. We'll definitely keep you guys posted. And lastly, this was a more recent case. So there was a story that came out somewhat recently about a U.S. ambassador who was actually spying for Cuba for decades. It was a bombshell, if you guys remember. He was charged back in December and has just now announced that he plans to plead guilty to these charges. This will be formalized in court on April the 12th. He is 73 years old, and based on the charges and the outlined sentencing, I would say there's a pretty good chance he spends the rest of his life in prison. And that for today is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "It's a faith walk until we walk on." If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review on that platform or a shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us to be able to keep creating the news du jour and reach more people who need a calmer space to consume the news. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/Sugar Free Media, and that is also linked in our show notes. You can follow us on social media at newsdujour.podcast on both Instagram and TikTok. You can follow my personal account at It's Annie Bowles on both platforms as well. Any little noises you may hear in the background are my rescue pup. He has a little separation anxiety and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from